Well, the information I'm about to share with you could be illegal in many parts of Florida. According to the National Institutes of Health, implicit or unconscious bias occurs automatically and unintentionally affects our behavior, meaning that our brains are wired to make snap judgments and treat people differently, in part based on how they look, which researchers and government and business leaders around the world relate to unintentional systemic racial bias. From the former CEO of American Airlines.
But discrimination, exclusion, and unconscious biases are enormous problems.
To the Prime Minister of Canada.
People are facing systemic discrimination, unconscious bias.
To Prince Harry.
Institutional racism has no place. Unconscious bias must be acknowledged.
But not in Florida schools or in Florida workplaces based on the law signed by Governor DeSantis. It bans acknowledgement of institutional racism and the premise that a person by virtue of race can be inherently racially biased, consciously or unconsciously. And that's how the information I just shared could in fact be illegal in many parts of Florida. Though the law is caught up in legal disputes and not fully adjudicated, so it's not entirely clear. And that's just one example of how the governor's content restrictions are causing confusion that may be nudging schools to err on the side of caution and censor all kinds of stuff the governor may or may not have specifically banned.
Telling educators and teachers to remove rainbow stickers or rainbow lanyards.
And that leads us to the gray area in another law the governor signed restricting discussions of sexual orientation in school.
And so you actually look at the bill and it says no sexual instruction in grades pre-K through 3.
Actually, it does not say that. It specifically bans discussions of sexual orientation, not sexuality in general. Republican Senator Jeff Brandes tried unsuccessfully to change it from sexual orientation to human sexuality so it wouldn't treat people differently, but his fellow Republicans in the legislature had other ideas.
So basically what I heard you say, just to confirm, that there seems to be a big uptick in the number of children who are coming out as gay or experimenting, and therefore we need to not discuss it in the younger grades. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of our concern for the well-being of our children.
But we digress. Let's back up and go back to the governor's broader point.
And so you actually look at the bill and it says no sexual instruction in grades pre-K through 3.
Yes, it does. And that point is clear, but it also adds a clause that extends it to higher grades.
And after 3rd grade, those curriculums need to be age appropriate.
Which can lend itself to interpretation and more confusion in gray area, which attorneys suing the state claim is by design to induce broader censorship without explicitly ordering it in the law.
These terms are not defined, and that is on purpose.
Now, figuring out what's age appropriate and what's not for all the higher grade levels can be tricky because people can and do draw very different lines on what they deem age appropriate. So where exactly does that leave books that include themes of sexual orientation, like The Color Purple or Truman Capote's Other Voices, Other Rooms? Or what if it's implied, like Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray? At what grade level, if any, might that be age appropriate? And extending it further, where exactly might that leave discussion, for example, of Justice Kennedy's landmark opinion, Obergefell versus Hodges, which guaranteed the right to same-sex marriage across the nation? See, a teacher, a librarian, an administrator may not just be thinking where they would draw the line, but where any parent who might file a legal complaint would. The law sends unresolved disputes to a special magistrate that schools facing complaints would have to pay for. And that's how the politicians can claim that they're banning discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity for grades K through 3, while teachers in higher grades may be feeling pressure to cover up or get rid of much more to avoid drawing potential costly complaints.
The fact that it's Literacy Week and we've got our bookshelves covered up is, to me, tremendously ironic.
And in addition to that, the governor and his administration reject class lessons for promoting what they call a radical agenda, which caused the initial dust up over that AP African American Studies class.
So that is more of ideology being used under the guise of history.
Well, the governor wants teaching by relaying facts, not discussing and interpreting views.
That's what our standards for Black history are. It's just cut and dried history. You learn all the basics, you learn about the great figures.
Great figures like Dr. King, who the governor, lieutenant governor, and State Department of Education quote as saying, "I have a dream that his children will one day live in a nation where they'll not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." But as per their restrictions, would leave out the part about how King hoped to get there by promoting an agenda that he himself called radical.
Racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
The bottom line is the governor's supporters say we should leave out agendas, while his detractors say that can leave out the parts that can reveal the true complexity of history and its leading figures. While some teachers and librarians who aren't sure what to keep or leave out may relate to this one closing thought. As once said, which will all be revealed in the next round of Money, Power, and Politics.